Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
We keep telling people when they sign up for our text that they need to save our contact, like save us as Rachel, whatever, Clarity on Fire, and then pick a picture.
Be clever about it.
That best represents us. And I have not yet suggested that they pick Grace and Frankie.
Oh, come on. That
is just a slam dunk.
Perfect.
Though neither of us is really Grace or Frankie. I mean, if we were to like...
You're more Grace and I'm more
sure,
Frankie, but they're extremes.
No, I mean, real extremes.
Yeah.
Like really, really, really extreme. Like, much more mild in comparison. Like I'm not drinking and numbing myself out and having no feelings.
No, and I'm not having sharing circles every 5 minutes.
Taking ayahuasca on the beach. No, you're not doing that.
No, I'm not doing that.
But that's a good idea. So if you haven't signed up for our texts yet, we're going to be sending out our next, text on Monday. So
remember, there's 2 ways that you can sign up to get texts from us.
The easy way is you can just go to clarityonfire.com/text-me, which is also linked in the episode description, and you can just sign up there. Or you can text us
at 703-783-3223. Rachel still can't believe that I remember that number. It's memorized now. It's
every
locked
time
away.
I'm like, oh, is she going to do it? 703-783-3223 with your text, your first name, space, just 1 space, and then your email address, send. And then you'll get a confirmation text that you're in.
And then you're signed up. That's all it takes. And someone recently asked us if Canada counts. Canada does count.
Yeah. So we
North
established
America.
North America counts and everyone else is out. Sorry.
Yep.
You can't sit with us. I wish you could.
I wish we could.
Yeah, I know.
We just only have an American number, so.
Yeah. So, okay. I also wanted to, before we dive into the episode, I wanted to read a new review we got, which I love to do. This one is from Apple Podcasts, someone named Jay Lee. So thank you, Jay Lee. Breath of fresh air. This podcast has been such a breath of fresh air for me. I often struggle describing my feelings in words, which is frustrating because the feeling is very real, but challenging to articulate. When I listen to Clarity on Fire, it's like constant light bulbs going off. I can finally put those feelings into words. Kristen and Rachel are really good at breaking down the human experience and explaining that we aren't crazy for feeling how we feel. What a relief. Lastly, I love how empowered I feel after listening to Rachel. They encourage us to tap into our intuition and trust it as a guide. The work you put into this podcast is incredibly appreciated, and I recommend it all the time. Thank you.
That's so nice.
It's really
love
nice.
That one.
Yeah. I feel like someone told me this once, and it's been one of the best things that stuck with me as far as compliments go, was that when you have a really good math teacher, even if you're not great at math, you can get good at math and you can understand it and it becomes easy for you. And that you and I are like the mental, emotional, spiritual versions of a good math teacher.
Well, as long as it's nothing to do with math,
we're good. We good.
You don't want us as a math teacher, I promise. But I love that. It was how to put words around things. And that's one of the few things we're good at, is putting a lot of words around.
Too many, but enough that eventually some of them get through. So thank you. Okay, here we are with a new interview with I was going to say an expert. This tends to be 2 experts, though, because we wanted to talk about friendship. And we'll get into more when we transition. We'll talk about why this particular subject at this particular time came up. But it's kind of an evergreen. Making friends, especially in adulthood, is hard, especially good friends, close friends, friends you can actually feel connected with on a deep level. So we thought, what better way to do that than have another set of BFFs on the podcast.
So you don't have to just hear us talk about our friendship. You hear us talking all the time, but we wanted to have another perspective, and
we did. So we brought...
And we did.
My friend, and we did. We brought my former client turned coach turned friend. You see, that's often the way with me is that I reel you in. You get me to do some coaching for you. I turn you into a coach. I really don't do this to everyone. I'm just telling, I promise. And then we become friends because we have this thing that we are relating with.
It's actually a very small
kind of become colleagues, and then
people
we become
coaches, but it does happen sometimes.
it makes it, I feel like it sounds like that's all I do. I don't want people to think this is a multi-level marketing scheme.
We just turn everyone else into coaches too.
Well, we don't know how to coach. We only know how to turn other people into coaches.
We'll solve your problems by making you too a coach. No, I promise not.
Actually, that wouldn't be the worst because then they could solve their own problems. That's
part of what coaching helps them do anyway, though.
Exactly. You don't need to become a coach. But anyway, so Shannon and I are great friends, and Shannon and Inez are great friends.
Well, let's hear about them.
You and I are great friends. You and Inez need to work on it. And maybe me and Inez need to work on it.
I've only met her in person one time, but we're going to work on it. She was fantastic.
Okay, so you want to read the bio?
Yeah. Okay. Inez Battistini and Shannon Egan are on a mission to help female entrepreneurs boost their productivity and manage their time so they can get things done and achieve their big goals without burning out in the process. When Inez and Shannon first became entrepreneurs, they struggled to be productive, stay motivated, and get results. But when they started co-working together, magic happened. That's when they created the Biz Sisterhood, a community of girl bosses supporting each other on their entrepreneurial journeys. They believe you have what it takes to build a thriving business, doing work you love with less overwhelm and more ease. So you can find them at thebizsisterhood.com or the Biz Sisterhood on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. At the Biz Sisterhood, Kristen.
And we will link to those as well.
Of course. And then at the end, they actually talking about they have their own quiz. So you should go take their quiz.
We know our people love quizzes. So
sure.
Please go take their quiz too.
We don't really talk about the business side of things very much. I mean, we talk about them navigating that aspect of their relationship. But for those of you who are entrepreneurial or curious about that, and you happen to be a lady, then you might want to check them out on that level. So, but that's just not what we didn't interview them about that. So in that way, they're not really experts they're not coaching people around friendship, but how can you be more of an expert than when
they're living it though?
Exactly. That's what I mean.
That counts
You're living
as
it all day. I agree. So, okay. We will be back at the end. Enjoy. Hello, Shanez.
Hello, Rachel.
I'm so happy to have...
This is our first double guests.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, no, we've had Stacy and Joanna on, but we haven't had another. Right. We haven't had another couple on. Another friendship
business couple. Friendship couple.
Yeah. No, we haven't had another dynamic duo on. Well, obviously that's why I wanted to have them on to talk about this stuff.
That name, by the way, the Shanez, that was not something that we came up with. Similar to your situation with Rachel.
No, you don't nickname yourself.
You don't, but some people do.
But you can own it if it's given to you. That's fine.
Yeah. So, okay. The reason that, what kind of tipped off and sparked the idea for this episode was Kristen and I were doing a workshop recently, and someone commented and said, I really wish that I had a friendship like you guys have. And she said it more eloquently and with better points than that. But the heart of it was I'm sad that I don't have that kind of relationship in my life. And I want one. I want something like that. And it got me thinking about, okay, well, can we talk to people about how to develop that or find that or open yourself up to that? And then it occurred to me, well, why don't we bring another dynamic duo on and we can kind of have a mega conversation about developing friendships, female friendships, really any kind of
friendship, just adult friendships.
Yeah.
It's hard. I have a lot of clients who struggle with making adult friendships. It just seems so much easier when we were younger and in school, and you were just always around people your own age with similar interests to you. And now you have to try it a little bit harder. It's just more complicated. So I have a lot of clients who are struggling with that too. So it's a question we get a lot.
So, okay. Remind us, and everyone, how did you guys meet?
So we met at a volunteer organization that I was part of at the time called Junior League that Inez was interested in joining. And I was heading up all of our recruitment efforts for that organization. And she came to an event as a prospective member.
I did.
It was a volunteering event where you showed up. And we met there back in 2016.
Correct.
So,
and it was like love at first sight.
I was going to ask, was it like instant chemistry or was it like a slow build?
At least from my side, I can say that...
You're going to like out me that
I mean, I'm not sure what happened on your side, but at least on my side, I was like, oh, another bright, light, loving personality. And it clicked instantly for me.
Yeah, I think we both felt that there were a lot of similarities that drew us together. And then it took us a bit of time to develop that relationship, which I'm sure we'll get into, why that's important. And now having a business together, that evolved over the course of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to point out about them is that they did not meet and become like BFFs and start a business together until they were both in their 30s. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important for people who are like, I don't have that friend. Like, you don't have to be 21 and have made all the friends you're ever going to make, and then that's it.
And you don't have to be friends with someone for a decade before you decide maybe we want to build something together, or maybe we want to do a project or something together. It can be something that you have a shared vision early on in the friendship too.
Sure. Also, what's funny about them is that they were like love at first sight, and you and I were like, whatever, for like quite a while.
We just got shoved together. Yeah. And then after a while, like the proximity.
But it took like over a year until you and I like kind of became friends on our own merit. Mm-hmm. And we lived together.
Mm-hmm. Like,
we each were like brought to a 4-person apartment by a different friend. And we didn't know, we were the only ones who didn't know each other. And then here we are.
Yeah.
Fingers without knowing it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. I kind of want to hear more about how you guys like went from strangers 3 years ago or 4 years ago to like now you have a business together. How did your relationship organically unfold? Because I think there's going to be some nuggets of wisdom in there that we can kind of pull for other people to learn from.
Sure. I love it. And I would definitely say that it's been an evolution. It's like we immediately connected when we met. But of course, it wasn't like, okay, let's start a business today or let's be best friends. It was more of, I like this girl. I think we can have a lot of things in common. And we just started doing like little lunch dates and meeting up at the volunteer events. And the more we got to know each other, the more we got to know about our passions and our interests and what we were doing.
Yeah, because we were both coaches, but that can mean very different things, right? But you were interested in more like the life purpose coaching, and I was more interested in helping people like with the career coaching. And we figured there's a lot of ways that we could synergize that. So we even started doing workshops together.
Yes.
For the nonprofit, the volunteer organization that we're part of. So we did like a goal setting workshop for them and collaborated on that. And it always just felt like from the get-go when we started collaborating on things together that we were the perfect complement. Like her strengths that she brings to the table are more like the design elements and the creative process. And I'm more of like the logical, analytical, like copywriting stuff. And we just both put in as much effort as the other person. Like, when you're working on a group project back in the day and you're like the one rock star in the group who's doing all the work and nobody else is doing anything, you're pulling the weight of everybody. It never felt like that with you. Like we were always both pulling the same weight, which was really part of why I think it worked so well.
100%. And that goes for both the personal and the professional. I think we found in each other someone that was willing to put in 100%. And it just felt like, wow, is this what it feels like to have someone that also cares and wants to succeed together?
Yeah. And then from there, we entertained this idea of co-working together. So at the time, we were living like 30 minutes away from each other, and we would alternate going to each other's house to do co-working where we would sit like across the table from each other and work on our respective businesses and kind of do like accountability check-ins to say, hey, what'd you get done today? Where can I help you? What ideas do you have for this? And that was like once a month we were doing that at first. And then I'll never forget, like there was a day after a month or something where we hadn't been together and Inez proposed to me.
It was proposal, everyone. No joke.
Because like for me all along, I'm a tribe member. So for those of you that have taken, the passion profile quiz, like, that we crave connection and building something together. So I was always lonely as a solopreneur and very much felt the solo part of that and was looking for that partner. But you were actually the one that proposed to me, let's increase the frequency with like that we're co-working. We should maybe do this every week. And so we started ramping it up from there. And that was in 2018.
18, yes.
And then in 2019,
I proposed again.
We launched our business, which was almost a year ago. It'll be a year next month.
Yes. I'm like, you know what? We're already co-working every day together. We're helping each other on our respective businesses. We have so many shared interests, values, goals. What would it look like if we did something together?
More officially.
Yeah.
And then the Biz Sisterhood was born.
Yes.
Well, what I love about this idea of the proposals is that it's actually kind of a vulnerable thing to say, hey, we're friends who go on coffee dates or go to lunch sometimes. Hey, do you want to actually spend an entire day co-working together? Hey, do you want to spend more regular time together? Hey, do you maybe want to go into business together? That's scary to ask someone that, because what if they don't feel the same way? What if they're not as invested? So I'm curious, how vulnerable did that feel? And how did you just say, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there and ask, even if I don't know exactly what she's going to say.
You are 100% right. It is a very vulnerable thing to ask. And I guess when you kind of know that she's on the same wavelength, I'm like, she's putting out the vibes. She wants to do this. And by the way, people, we're business partners and friends, just in case what I'm saying.
I've been there. I've definitely had to clarify that a number of times.
Clarify that we absolutely love and adore each other as friends and business partners. Sometimes I say things, but anyway, she was definitely receptive, I guess I would say. And it just felt like the thing to do. And even if she had said no, I knew that I needed to put it out there, and instead of later regretting and continuing solo.
Well, the reason why I feel like it's so important to clarify, like, hey, this is just business. Honestly, it has so much it's so similar to dating.
Yeah.
That's why we're like, I don't know, I'm like getting the vibes. It's exactly that same experience of slowly getting to know someone and slowly being like, do you want to take this to the next level? And so the same vulnerabilities can come up in friendships. You're like, am I like allowed to ask them on a friend date? Is that weird? Are we there yet? So it's normal to be going through those same thought processes. And I don't want anyone to be like, why does this feel so awkward and weird? Well, because dating feels awkward and weird. And that's kind of what you're doing just for friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. We've always said this is a relationship. 100%.
Through and through. And that's part of why, like, a testament to the fact that it takes time to build that. You can't just expect instantaneously. You're like, sometimes, sure, you're walking down the street and you happen to meet someone and they become your best friend. I've definitely had that happen to me. But in this case, it was like that nurturing, the slow build. There's like the flirting phase, like the toying with different levels. And then, the business came out of it.
So, okay. I want you guys to think about not just your relationship, but like other friendships you've cultivated too. So like Shannon, you and I are like super close friends just on our own. Yeah. And I feel like Inez and Kristen should become super close friends so that we can complete the square. We need
let's do it, Inez.
So I want you, so it doesn't have to be just about your relationship. It can be about like how you nurture friendships in general. But I'm curious, what are some things that come to your mind in terms of like how to sort of intentionally take relationships to the next level? Because I think a lot of people have friends or people that they're like got their eye on. And they're like, I think I could be friends with that person, or I think I could develop something with that person. Or, you know, there's some potential somewhere with a coworker or, you know, a friend of a friend. And you're like, how do I like wedge myself in there and like without being weird or awkward and actually build something or try to nurture something with someone?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that gut instinct that Inez was talking about, where like sometimes you just really know that person is putting out the same vibe that you're looking for, and that you have shared values and enough shared interests that it makes sense to propose something, and you're probably going to get a yes in response. But I think to take a friendship to another level, it's that willingness to let yourself be seen and be, you know, vulnerable and authentic in who you really are. One of the things that I feel like I've noticed so much in the friends that I'm attracted to the most, like my strong female friends in my life, like you included, Inez is definitely for sure. Like your willingness to have that conversation with me of like, hey, I want to put this out there for us to work together in a more serious way. I noticed that I value these qualities of like direct communication, very like assertive women who know themselves, are very true to who they are and aren't afraid to put that out there. So that quality for me has always been something that I'm drawn to because I know it's a quality I want to develop more in myself. So I've kind of like looked for ways to enhance that, and seeing that in other friends has made me be able to take the relationship to a deeper level, because it's like, this is not just about going out for coffee or lunch. It's like personal development. Like I can learn from you and you can learn from me. There's a win dynamic there.
You're actually, Shannon, going right into a question that I wanted to ask you guys, both of you, which is, what are some of the qualities? You started to list a couple right there, Shannon, but what are some of the qualities that at least you're looking for that make you think this person has the potential to be not just a friendly acquaintance, but potentially a really good, long-lasting friend?
Right.
For me, usually someone that can inspire me to be who I am, and someone who loves me as I am and celebrates that. That's always been really big for me. And, you know, having someone that can be honest about everything with empathy and compassion, those are qualities that are very important to me.
And I would add to that, I was actually in a session with my therapist recently where we were talking about relationships. And she's like, well, what's the deal with Inez? Like, what is it that makes you feel so comfortable with her? And I immediately said, I can say anything to her and I know she's going to love and accept me no matter what. Like, there's just no judgment there. I feel the same way about you, Rachel, other good friends that I have, Kristen, obviously included there. I know you're not going to judge me. So that feeling that you can open up and be met with unconditional love and acceptance is definitely a quality that when you find it in somebody, it's a gem. It's a treasure for sure.
I would add that, like, obviously when you first meet someone, they don't yet have unconditional love for you because they don't know you yet.
Sure.
But there's ways that you can tell if that person has the quality that you're looking for, which is, I feel like, to me, when I'm like, what I look for in a friend, even though I actually don't go looking for friends, they tend to find me.
Yes.
Like, most of them are extroverts who just insisted on being my friend. And I was like, okay. But they all have one big thing in common, which is like, these are people who take responsibility for themselves and they are really into personal growth and development. And they're just not interested in having surface level relationships or conversations. They're just not. And so I feel like when you have someone who's interested in their own growth and their own potential, then it just stands to reason that they're going to be open-minded enough to give you kind of like, you know, unconditional love and acceptance and or work through hard things with you, you know?
Yes.
Like, they're going to be able to like kind of stick around. I feel like, again, like you can't pour into a cup that's already full. So that's like not a great quality in a friend, is someone who's already kind of like, this is who I am. This is like, I have all the information I already need. I'm not interested in learning anything new or growing, it's like, why would I want to be friends with that person?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about most relationships, right, there has to be the constant commitment to evolution and growth for it to be able to weather all the different storms and seasons. So yeah. I definitely agree with that.
100%.
And also, when you're trying to figure out, is this someone who I can just be myself around and confide in? You're going to have to be a little uncomfortable and vulnerable, like we were talking about before, and share some things. You don't have to be a complete overshare with every stranger you meet, but you might have to share some personal things and just say, hey, this is actually how I'm feeling today. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I don't know you that well. And you may or may not get the response you want. You might get some people who are like, whoa, that was weird. Like, we don't know each other that well. Okay, great. That person probably can't handle what you're going to be sharing down the line. But if you can share something and feel really safe and they're accepting and they ask questions and they bring that empathy, it's probably a good sign that that's someone you could develop a further friendship with. So you can figure that out before you really know, is this person going to be able to accept me unconditionally? You can kind of test those waters.
Yeah, I mean, to Rachel's point about the personal development and the commitment to that journey, for sure, there have been times when I'm having a conversation with friends and they get triggered by whatever I'm going through. And that's like a wall kind of goes up for me, because like I really value friends who can be aware enough of their own triggers that they don't try to one up me or bring that into the conversation. And they're really just able to hold space for whatever it is I'm going through at the time. And I don't know if you want to talk about the giving and receiving, but this might be a good time to share that nugget of wisdom.
So as a recovering people pleaser, I'm always in rehab for pleasing.
I'm in there with you, Inez.
See, that's why we need to be the other corner, right?
Yes.
That Rachel was talking about. So as a people pleaser in rehab, I tend to overgive in all sorts of relationships, family, friends, and something that, we've learned in our journey and in my journey with other friends is when there's too much overgiving on one side of the friendship, you start feeling depleted and your cup is no longer full or half full. And then the energy of the friendship starts changing. And that's where a good friendship knows when to say, hold on. We need to course correct.
Or have an honest conversation. That happened to us recently because I was going through some stuff and I would like continuously open up about it. And Inez was there for me and holding space and the no judgment and the listening and all the things. But at some point I felt like it was depleting, your energy to a point where I actually insisted on, I think we need to have a boundary around this. Like, let's do a monthly check-in as opposed to a daily dish out of every little detail that's going on. So having those boundaries and making sure that you're able to be there equally as possible for each other helps to sustain it.
I'm so glad you brought this part up because we have a lot of people pleasers in our audience. We made a whole course about it last year because we have a lot of people in that space. And what is so ironic is a lot of times people have that people pleasing tendency because they so want to be liked and they so want to have those connections and friendships. But what you're describing is that if that runs amok, it can actually create an imbalance and cause damage to the friendship because you're giving too much and you're depleted and now there's resentment or now there's whatever, this imbalance, and the people pleasing gets in the way of the exact thing that the people pleasing was trying to get you. And so being able to check in with yourself and overcome the people pleasing tendencies, or at least keep them in check, is so important to being able to have healthy long-term friendships. So I love that Shannon was like, hey, wait, maybe can I help write this balance? And I think that's the mark of a fantastic friendship. And you can't necessarily always wait for other people to do that. So I wonder, and this is people pleaser to people pleaser, how you have tried to be aware of those tendencies and as much as possible keep them in check. Because I know our people are having that problem.
Ooh, 100%. That is one of my lifelong growth opportunities. And in this specific example, I was so grateful to her for being the one to be like, hey, I need to protect you. Thank you for giving, but I need to protect you. So usually that doesn't happen as much to me anymore. I've been pretty good at setting boundaries and reminding myself that I can't give if I'm not feeling good myself. In this case, I think it's because it's the first time that it's a friend and a business partner. And it's like I'm with her every day. So I think my rehab momentarily was not happening, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. You got like kind of caught up in the honeymoon phase of, you know, the relationship sort of, I would imagine, right? Like it's like an intense, it's probably brings out a little bit of codependency, you know, or a little bit of like that anxious attachment. Like, oh, I really love you. I want to like be with you all the time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I wasn't watching my energy and I wasn't setting my boundaries because I was having such a good time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I'm depleted now.
It caught up on me. We had a moment where I hadn't even realized that this was happening.
Yeah, she was like, oh, maybe it's that I wasn't eating the right thing, or maybe I had an allergy to this. And I'm like, no. I'm going to tell you right now
what is happening. I'm like, my thyroid.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like the comment I made earlier about the qualities that I'm attracted to in my female friends, which is like people who are strong and assertive and not afraid to have difficult conversations. I think surrounding myself with people like that, you know, as included, allowed me to be able to say that to you directly. But hey, I think we need to have a boundary around this. And that's not something I would have been able to do before. So
yeah.
It's a good point about boundaries and friendships, because I think a lot of times we want those friendships where you can just like completely be yourself all of the time and no holds barred. And just like in all relationships, you have to have some boundaries between what you share or what, because that's what create. I mean, you would want to do that with a spouse. You'd want to do that with a family member. Like boundaries with people that you care about are important, and they're not counterproductive to relationships. They're actually the only way sometimes you can maintain them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think like the communication wise, I have friends that, you know, sometimes I'll put off calling them for a while because I'm like, oh God, I know when I talk to them, it's going to be like a 3-hour catch up marathon session, but not in like a good way, because you're thinking like, I don't really have 3 hours to do that. So I found that sometimes like just proactively like sending snail mail or like making a video for someone or just calling them randomly and not having to schedule a time to talk and just being like, I really only have 10 minutes on my way to the grocery store, but I wanted to hear your voice, you know, like keeping in communication in a way that works for you and honors those boundaries is a really important thing to consider as you start to build those friendships.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, okay. I feel like I might want to go back to some of these points, especially about like nurturing friendships. But I also want to like talk a little bit about what about the people who don't have anybody who like is like their close friend and they're like, I really want someone, but I don't even have a prospect right now. Like, I mean, they could get on Bumble Friends. I heard that's a thing now.
I know. I was just
like
saying,
dating apps for friends now.
Dating app for friends.
But see, that brings up my point, which is that Kristen and I met in college, but like every other friend I've made like since then has been through my work as a coach in some way or another. Like Shannon was my client like 5 years ago or more now. And then we became friends. And I've met, you know, some of our close friends through coach training, like us being in that room with Joanna. And we've met our friend Stacy volunteering later on at that same organization. And so, and you guys met like at an organization, like where you were both volunteering. And so I think that there's something in that, like you might run into like a friend who ends up being a friend for life at work. That would be great if that happens. But if you kind of have the same sort of life where every day you're getting up and you're going to the same place and you're doing the same thing and you're not making any new friends, then it's probably because you're not in a space where you're sharing some sort of deeper value with a group of people who you might have more potential to connect and collaborate with. And that's what I really want to encourage people to do. And I want to open up like for discussion, like where do people go or what should their next step be to like open themselves up to the kind of people that they could be friends with?
Yeah, I mean, I think in response to that question, there's like the outer strategic answer, and then there's the more inner personal development answer.
Let's do both.
Both are relevant, right? So from an outer strategic standpoint, I would say, yeah, volunteering organizations, meetup.com. I met one of my best friends through there. The coach training program, I've met one of my other really close friends through there. So activities or interests that you have developed or are curious to develop, going out and like showing up and doing so consistently and allowing yourself to be seen when you show up, meaning like you're willing to go. And even if you don't meet anybody the first time, you're not going to be so discouraged that you don't go back. You're like, okay, maybe if on the Saturday afternoon thing, it wasn't very fun, I'll go on a Wednesday night and see if it's any different. So like that willingness to just kind of keep consistently showing up and trying things in different community organizations, even online spaces. I mean, I've heard it's possible to meet people on Instagram and then meet them in real life. So that's also,
right.
That's also
Anything's possible.
But then on the inner work side, I would say, like when you showed up in my life, it's not like I knew that I was looking for you or something, but I was at a point where I was open and receptive to the idea of what kind of friends I wanted to have. Like I had a very clear vision of like the kind of values I wanted that person to have, what qualities they would bring to the table. And I think clarifying that in your own mind to round out whatever it is you think you need from a friend, starting with that kind of visualization and then going out there and just being open to the fact that that person could be the person in line behind you at the grocery store. It could be somebody that you like pass in the crosswalk randomly. I met one of my best friends here in Miami because of her cute little French bulldog that was her dog walker was walking, and we just like struck up a conversation. And then I met her a few weeks later and saw the dog again and was like 2 and 2 together. Yes, we need to be friends. And it happened just instantaneously like that. So I would say the really being open is the inner part that's important.
I also want to remind our introverts that are listening that, because I feel like some of the extroverts, that's going to feel like it's going to be a hurdle for everyone, right? It's always uncomfortable and weird to go places where you don't really know anyone. And you're like, well, I like this thing, and maybe I'll like some of these people who like this thing. That it doesn't have to be like you stepping into a huge networking event. Like meetup groups like you're talking about, Shannon, sometimes 4 people show up. And you can just pair off with one semi-interesting person and have one conversation and call that a productive use of your time, like trying to connect with like-minded people. So I don't want people who are like, oh God, the idea of going into a room full of strangers is so off-putting to me that I'm just going to shut everything down. You can work your way up to that, or you can just find smaller groups that are a little bit more approachable and a little bit less intimidating. Because as a fellow introvert, I'm like, I have gone to those networking events. I hate them. I stand in the corner and like talk to no one and hand out a couple business cards and then run away.
Yeah, and my bitch face does me no favors.
No, I actually have an idea for that. The way I've met a couple of friends when I moved here to Miami, I had 0 friends, 0 family other than my husband. And I am an extrovert that is sometimes introverted. And so when I first moved here, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to meet friends? And I just started going to like painting classes or mini cooking classes or like a wine tasting. So it wasn't in a place where I felt like I needed to network. It just so happened that there were other people there interested in things that I was interested in. And one of my really good friends I met in a painting class.
Well, I like that because you're actually doing a solo activity.
Yes.
Like painting, or cooking, but you just happen to be doing it next to someone else who's also doing a solo activity. I'm like, oh yeah, as an introvert, I'm into that. Right? It's like, oh, if we just happen to talk while we're doing our own separate things, then it can feel a lot more organic and a lot more approachable. So you don't have to be a crazy social butterfly or a super extrovert to be able to start building those connections. I love those ideas. That's good.
I want to also touch on what Shannon said earlier about consistency, because if I kind of boil down the friendships I've made and developed and like strengthened too, because I think there's plenty of friendships I could have had that could have stayed really great on one level, but that I've been able to take to a deeper level because like I and the other person sort of like put in another level of effort. And I think the effort is like being available consistently. So like sometimes I'll have a friend call me and it's not super convenient, but I'll answer because I'm like, either I can answer and like we can connect for a little bit and maybe it's only for like 10 minutes and then I've got to go, or I don't get that chance to connect with them. And as an introvert, often my first inclination is to like protect my solo time and be like, you know, but like, then I try not to go with my default tendency a lot of the time because I'm like, because I know after talking to them, I'm going to feel better and I'm going to feel more excited, or I'm just going to feel maybe a little bit closer to them. And I just feel like that's often how friendships are nurtured, or are in kind of like each individual kind of connection and conversation point. And so I'm not saying you have to answer 100% of the calls because like I don't always do that. If someone calls me, like I'm not answering every single time. But if I have a friend who's like, I'm heading out for a walk this morning, do you want to talk? I'll try to say yes. Like I'll actually like make an effort to say yes, you know, or if someone's like asking me out to lunch, again, I'm going to try to make an effort to say yes. I have my own boundaries. I'm very good at knowing what my limits are. And so it's not like I'm ever in danger of over giving. Like I'm not a people pleaser by nature.
But if you are, you could do what Shannon said earlier, where you say, I've got 10 minutes.
Right. You can set boundaries around it. But I just feel like showing up consistently is very important. And I also have learned a lot about making friends from the people who've been very good at like making friends with me. Like I naturally am not talented at that, but I've watched other people sort of like woo me. Like Shannon definitely did that. And some of my like former clients turned like coaches turned friends have also done that. And what they do is they just text me very consistently, or they email me very consistently. They're just like, what's up? Look, I did a thing. Here's a picture of a thing that I did today. And it's not like, or here's a podcast. Like they'll share something with me. And then I'll make an effort to like listen to the episode they sent me, or to like read the thing they sent me and comment on it and give them kind of like, not just on a surface level, but I'll make an effort to engage with what they're actually sending or sharing, because they're sharing like a piece of themselves with me. It doesn't have to be like long and involved. It's just like, here's a cool podcast episode. It made me think of you. Like, to me, that's like a next level of engagement, you know, other than just like, here's a funny GIF, which I love too.
Well, and consistency has to be present, I think, at all of the stages, even the stages of I go to an art class. Well, you may not make your best friend in one art class.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go to a painting class every week for a month to even get to know someone's, you know, full name. And that might be okay. So consistently showing up places where there are people who you might want to connect with. And then once you actually get somebody on the hook, consistently keeping the communication going. And I will agree, as an introvert, I'm not so talented at that, as thank goodness for the extroverts of the world. But like we can learn a thing or two from them.
I was going to say, allow yourselves to be wooed. I definitely think that's something that we both share, that quality. Mm-hmm. It's actually one of my strengths, in the Strengths Finder. I'm a wooer. So if you ask all of my friends, they all say, once we met Ines, we didn't stand a chance. Because if she knew she wanted to be your friend, that's it. She's going to be your friend one way or another. So,
which is like the best thing ever.
Yeah, right? They didn't have to do any work. I did it. And they reciprocated, of course.
Yeah.
I do also want to spend a few minutes talking about, okay, once you have some, well, you know, decently or well-established friendships, sometimes you're going to come up against disagreements, or...
Which we kind of touched on a little bit ago.
Yeah, but I guess I'm curious, we're all coaches, so we've learned some helpful communication skills, but I'm curious, as things have come up either between the two of you or between you and other friendships, What are some of the helpful communication skills that you have used to be able to work through them productively and not have it create just a break in the relationship?
Not making assumptions about what it means. Like if somebody does ghost you or go silent for a period, don't assume that that necessarily means that it's the end of the friendship. It could just mean that they think you need space to work through something and they're trying to be a good friend to you by giving you that space. We're just, I think as human beings, we crave the connection. We want to be in communication with people. And so we jump to all these conclusions, and the stories in our head are not necessarily what's actually happening. So, maintaining open lines of communication within those boundaries that have been kind of agreed upon, or unspoken boundaries, respecting them has been helpful for me. And definitely just not assuming that I know what's causing the other person to be silent for a period of time.
And if the person isn't silent and you have them right there and there's a disagreement, your interpretation is also key there, because we see things through our filter, right? And through our experiences. And I feel like before reacting, I tend to ask a lot of questions. I want to clarify everything before I decide this is when I'm going to respond. And so I think that's been really helpful for me in all of my friendships. I always give the benefit of the doubt before jumping in and reacting. I want to understand you before I give you my opinion.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to like core desired feelings, which we've talked about, of like, if you want to maintain inner peace, how is it best to respond? You're not going to have that crazy strong reaction that causes you to like freak out on the person. You're going to try to like respond from the place of like maintaining your own inner peace to meet them where they're at and figure out what's really going on.
And of course, it's not always easy. Sometimes it's triggering. And I always say that I visually see when that happens, I see this like red flashing pause sign that's telling me pause, please pause. And when I see that, I can even in that moment tell the person, oh my gosh, I love you so much. Give me one moment. I need to breathe and bring myself back to who I really am. Because if we keep talking right now, I'm going to be someone that I'm not.
Yeah, because people can push you over the edge, especially the ones that know you best.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who struggles with that, like the pause doesn't happen. It like just like blows right through whatever that was. So no, but like Kristen and I have argued a lot, and often like we would have like the same arguments over and over again, and like eventually I think we always get to the bottom of what we're actually arguing about. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to like take your ego slightly out of the equation. And you have to be like willing to see things not as you are, but as they are, right? Like that's kind of how we see things, is just through our own lens, like Ina said, like through our own filter. And you kind of have to be willing to consider, okay, well, if I weren't to see it from that perspective, what would it look like? And then, yeah, so much of it is just about like the story I'm telling myself in this moment is this, but what might actually be happening could be something very different. And if I keep acting according to what I think the story is, then I'm not actually going to get to the bottom of what's really going on. And we're not going to find any sort of like resolution to this, which is why arguments keep happening, is because you never actually get to the bottom of what you're really disagreeing about or what's really clashing, right?
Which is why those clarifying questions to the other person and sometimes to yourself too, like, why am I getting so triggered? And what is really behind my reaction?
Yeah.
And also, what are they really saying? Because I'm making up this whole story. So it's hard when you're triggered to ask those clarifying questions because you want to just react. But that's where, when you can hit that pause button, it helps. I will say a lot of my tendencies are I want to resolve things in that moment. And I think sometimes part of having trust in the strength of a relationship is like, we might have to not resolve it today and process and come back and resolve it another day. Or this might be a tiered approach to resolution. And that's okay too. It's just a longer expression of you have to just communicate through all stages of that processing as best you can, because you respect the other person. So it's messy.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
You get triggered. I always say like anger is a secondary emotion. So there's got to be something else going on underneath that that's causing you to get triggered. So what is it really? You know, are you lonely? Are you afraid of something? What might that be? So getting really curious with yourself is absolutely important.
And I think that I'm just thinking about people I've coached who've had difficulties with friends. And this might be like a good kind of like, maybe not the last point, but a last point to touch on is sometimes people are in friendships where the person is never going to be able to meet their needs. And sometimes you kind of have to know, like, and again, this gets back to like what we talked about at the very beginning is recognizing if someone is capable of being like a really great friend to you. And I've had people who are very disappointed that like they had friends who maybe they grew distant from and they couldn't kind of bridge that gap again. Or they couldn't, you know, like they have a friend and the friend's just not able to meet them where they're at for whatever reason. So I think you have to be very clear about like, what are my needs as a person? And are those needs reasonable, first and foremost? Because you got to kind of sometimes examine your own intentions, right? Like if you have any sort of like anxious attachment or codependent behavior, sometimes your needs are going to be like, they could be unreasonable for a friend to meet. And not just a friend, maybe a spouse. Like you can't get all needs met from one person for sure. So you have to be able to like, right, spread the wealth a little bit. But like if your needs are reasonable, which I'm sure most of us listening to this are, then I think you have to be able to like really clearly articulate what are they and is this person really capable of meeting them? And if they're not, then that's okay. But I can't keep going back to the same source and almost like punishing myself with hoping that this person can meet me halfway. Because I feel like the reason that your relationship works and the reason that mine and Kristen's relationship has worked and hopefully will continue to work is that like we are willing to meet each other halfway. And I think especially when you've been friends with someone for like a really long time, like Kristen and I have been friends for like, 13 years or something like that. I think it ebbs and flows. Like sometimes one person's going to be like doing more and sometimes the other's going to be doing more. Like it's never going to be totally 50-50, just like a marriage, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. But like it does balance itself out. And I think that's what makes for good friends is like they're equally committed.
Yes.
Yeah. And paying attention to when your needs evolve and shift as well is important. You can have that awareness in the beginning of a friendship, but look, if it runs the course of 13 years or 5 years or whatever, even 2 years, people's needs can and will likely shift.
That's a good point.
During that time.
They
so
do.
like checking in to make sure, hey, does this still make sense? And I think a quality that is really important would be loving and accepting that friend, even if they make choices that you wouldn't otherwise make in your own life. And that goes back to that unconditional love and support piece of it so that you can ebb and flow, across different time periods in a relationship. And also when it comes to like, I don't know if anyone has had this happen, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but like a friend that you were originally pretty gung-ho about, and then they kind of like served their purpose and became sort of toxic. And then you were like, I don't really want to be friends with this person. And then you have like that conscious uncoupling or whatever you guys call it of like, I don't really want to be friends with this person anymore. And sometimes it takes like a geographic move for you to like move to a new city to really like create a boundary with someone. And that's okay too. Like you're allowed to end a friendship. It doesn't have to end in a big blowout or anything, but like you can end it if it's no longer serving your needs and you feel like you've maybe tried to communicate that to that friend and they're not really hearing you or able to meet you where you're at. So, be mindful of like your own needs in that way too.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was actually a final point that I wanted to make because I have a couple of clients right now who they haven't met their new group of friends, like their new tribe that's meeting them where they're at in their evolution. And they have maybe some friends that are just from a past era in their life. And they can tell it's like I'm thinking one client in particular, she's like, I don't even really enjoy my time with them anymore, you know, but I don't have a new group yet. And I think it's scary, but essentially what you're saying, Shannon, is like, it's okay. You have permission to let that go. And that actually might open space for the right people to come in, even if it's might feel a little lonely in the meantime.
Well, yeah, and I don't think there's any like one right way to do friendship, right? Like we all have seen, Sex in the City or whatever, and you have like the 4 perfect friends that everybody hangs out and does all the things together. And like my whole life, I used to have friends, a group of girlfriends in like elementary school and middle school, and then we had a whole kerfuffle, and I kind of was out of the friend group. And I didn't have friends that were girls until after college. Like I was in a relationship, and I was always like, I'm better friends with guys than I am with girls. And I kind of like pushed that off. And then once I started working and made friends as adults, I realized like it's okay to have a friend from this interest area and then a friend over here. Like you don't have to have one cohesive group of friends either. And I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to have that perfect girl gang friend group. And like that doesn't have to be what it looks like for you. And I'm very extroverted. So maybe somebody would think like, oh, she has a huge group of girlfriends that she's been friends with since elementary school. No. Like I have a little friend here, there, everywhere. And like sometimes I bring people together, but I much prefer to just have everybody kind of like doing their own thing. That's totally fine.
Of course it is.
Yeah, we don't have to force people together just to make it work. Like,
just to live that like sitcom lifestyle.
No, there's just no need. Okay, so this is awesome. I would keep talking about this forever because friendship is really important. And to be honest, like, I feel like through the ups and downs, especially of the last like couple years, I feel like that has like been the thing that probably saved me from some like really bad like depression or anxiety. I mean, like, and I already have had depression and anxiety, but like the worst of the worst was spared because I had people who I very much like. Shannon, shout out to Nina, who may never listen to this, but if she does, she'll be excited to hear her name at some point. Like people who I was able to connect with and call and talk to, like they weren't my therapist. That wasn't their job. But if I didn't have like real people to rely on and lean on, it would just, I can't imagine how lonely of an existence that would be and how hard that would be. Like friendship makes everything better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It helps you through a lot of ups and downs, as you said, in life.
I also think it makes you less reliant on any, like I think having a good group of friends or even just one or two like really close friends makes you less reliant on any other one thing in your life to meet all of your needs, like a spouse or a job. Sometimes we can be trying to get all of our needs for fulfillment met in a job because maybe we're actually just feeling lonely on an interpersonal level. And so I feel like having well-rounded friendships is actually an important thing to balance out your life so that you're not actually like putting way too much emphasis on any one other person or thing to meet all of your needs. That's not healthy.
Nope.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about having like different types of friends. Like you can have the caregiver friend or like the really extroverted social friend that you can always call for a good time or cheer you up or, the whatever, all kinds of friends. The adventurer that wants to go on a trip with you. Like you have that variety so that, like you said, you don't have to lean on one friend for all the qualities.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, as we're like ending this episode, tell us where they can find you guys and what they should go do.
Awesome. Okay. So as the co-founders of the Biz Sisterhood, we created a quiz called the Girl Boss Quiz. That helps you find out your unique girl boss personality. And we know a lot of people feel different ways about the phrase girl boss, but we essentially deem that to be somebody who is empowered to take charge of their life and fulfill their passions in a way that's meaningful to them. So we created a quiz. You can access it it's a bit.ly. So it's bit.ly/the Girl Boss Quiz. And that's
and you can also find it on our Instagram at the Biz Sisterhood.
Yeah, that's probably the best place to find us. And the link is in our bio there. Our motto is less hustle, more flow. So we really love to help female entrepreneurs or aspiring women business owners figure out how to get things done without all the crazy hustle and make sure they're taking care of themselves in the process.
Indeed.
I can so get behind being a girl boss with low hustle.
Yeah, the least amount of hustle.
Into that.
Gotta have a harmony between the hustle and the
I will link to your guys' site, your Instagram, the quiz, everything in the show notes. So they can always just go there if they want to take it, which they should. Especially all of you aspiring or actually entrepreneurial type peeps over there. And also, I just want to give you guys hope that, like, Kristen and I may have met when we were 19, but Shannon and Inez didn't meet until a few years ago, and here they are. They're Shanez.
Yes.
So you two can have your own Shanez.
It was crazy the day that we got dubbed Shanez. It was by you guys and another person. And the other person does not know us well at all. And he just like came up with that name, like a very professional corporate person, totally out of the blue, emailed us and said, "Hey, Shanez." And the same day, you guys, it was the sign from the universe.
On the same day I called you Shanez?
Yes.
That really is a sign. That is cool.
That's really funny.
We're clearly destined to be
Shanez.
Now you really have to own it.
Our one last thing I'll say is when our friend Anna called us Rachel, she laughed so hard she farted, and then she laughed even harder.
I love it.
Oh my God, we were crying. We were laughing so hard.
Oh my God, that was wild.
So anyway,
And it stuck.
Yep. So I mean, that's the level on which we're at. You know, I think that makes sense though.
Full transparency.
Yeah. That's what friendship is about.
That's true. If you can't talk about poop stuff in front of your friends, you're not really friends.
No.
Exactly.
That is so true. You just got to be willing to be open to it.
All right. Well, we love you guys. Thank you for coming on.
This was so great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh God, I thought of another one. We could be Mrs. Maisel and Susie Meyerson.
Oh no, who's who?
Unfortunately, I'm Susie.
No.
But you could never be a comedian. That's not a good.
No.
You could never
but
do
I
that.
I could wear those outfits.
I'm kind of both Midge and Susie at the same time. I'm a really weird combination of those two, but I could never be that thin and fit and
I would love to rock those 50s
God.
and 60s clothes though.
yeah, Mrs. Maisel is so good.
Best wardrobe.
Okay, so reminder, sign up for texts. We're not going to keep talking about this every time, but I'll bring it up eventually because like this is an ongoing thing. So 703-783-3223.
And text your name and then a space and then your email address. And that's it. Then you're signed up. Or click the link in the episode description and just go sign up on our website.
That
Both
would
are
be
super
too.
easy.
We will see you on Tuesday. Remember, we're doing every other Tuesday episodes now. And for the most part, we're going to do Magic 8 Ball. This is something I'm just calling. No one, like, this isn't a phrase. Magic 8 Ball style. I don't think anyone, like, goes around saying that anymore. This is a very out-of-date reference.
When's the last time anyone who listened to this used a Magic 8
or
ball?
saw one? Like, but
Are they still in production?
I don't know. What's in them? Are they safe?
I don't know.
But whatever. We're doing Magic 8 Ball style episodes where you shake it and you just see what comes to the surface. So, I mean, for you, it's going to feel like that. For me, it's not going to be a surprise because I'm going to pick it for you. But we're going to go back through our almost 200 episode archive and just pick one random episode every other Tuesday and reintroduce it to you because most of you have never heard 100% of our episodes. For those of you who have, I mean, hey,
Kudos, but
also a re-listen, sometimes you're in a very different place and it's interesting to see how much you get the second time that you weren't paying attention to the first, or often you're just like, oh, I changed a lot since hearing that the last time.
also, if you've heard us talk for that many hours, which is so many hours, then there's no way you can remember everything.
No, that is true. Right, exactly. Maybe you went through a binge and you just listened to 10 in a row and then you didn't retain any of it because you didn't let it marinate. So, whatever. Either new opportunity or a revisited opportunity to get
And there's some, especially from early on in 2018, that I want to bring back.
Yeah.
Because I know they got lost, but they were good.
I think there's a great number that just weren't that just kind of went below the radar. And I don't like that. I like everything I do to be front and
in
center.
the spotlight.
Yeah, truly.
Many times over.
I like my stuff to be in the spotlight. I like to be able to sit in yoga pants and no makeup if I prefer. Not in the
That's what
spotlight.
podcasting does.
Exactly.
Win-win.
I'm here living my best life. So
come back on Tuesday and see what you get.
okay, bye.
Bye.